So some struggles before implementing PAX were definitely the running in the hallway, pushing in the hallway, having really untidy lines all over the place, monitoring the noise level and trying to get them, to use a whisper voice. Hallways were really loud. Definitely the touching, poking.
Yamhill Carlton is a small school district in rural Oregon. We've only got about 1,000 kids here in 3 buildings, elementary, intermediate, and high school. So we work really cohesively with all of our kids, K-12, district-wide. And as a community, it's really a community that's rooted in traditions and histories, connections to family. A lot of the families here can track their history back to the Oregon Trail, and they know where their families have come from, and it's really interesting and a rich environment. I've been at Yamhill Carlton Elementary for 4 years, and when I started, I was working through some of the traditional foundations with kids of reactive practice. A kid would have an issue, and we'd sit down with that child and kind of coach them and talk them through it. There'd be a consequence when we move on. And going through that, a problem that I noticed over and over was students did not know the expectations necessarily of how to behave in class. And it wasn't that we weren't putting rules out there, we weren't giving expectations. We had things written up, they were in newsletters to parents and handbooks to families that they signed. We went over the rules a couple times a year. But one of the things that came out of that as I was working with students was that students didn't have any ownership of what they wanted school to be.
We have in grades K through 5, 400 students. We have about 1,000 students district-wide, and we're all up here on one campus. We have 40% Native American population because we have the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde in our district. We have 100% free and reduced lunch, and we are Title I school-wide because of that. We have a high special ed percentage. We're at 21%, which is quite higher than the state average. A lot of our families here are affected with poverty and generational poverty, and a lot of our kids come from trauma background. Some kids are going through it right now, some kids have already gone through it. And our job as educators is to help them find new ways to cope and to deal with that trauma. But in doing so, it's made it a challenge for us of not knowing what to do and kind of dealing with our own trauma because of it and not being able to help. So about 4 years ago was about the worst that we've seen. Trauma was really high. There was a point where we couldn't keep bulletin boards on the wall. They'd last about a half a day and they were ripped off. Visitors to the school would walk into screaming, lots of profanity, shouting. It was a very unsafe place. We were doing a lot of classroom clears for safety issues, a lot of chair throwing, but kids were they were not in class, they weren't ready to learn, and we didn't know how to help them because suspending them makes it a safer place, but it doesn't help them to learn the skills and how to cope with it. So we were putting Band-Aids on big bullet wounds and nobody knew how to help.
We do. We have so much trauma here from every aspect, everything you can think of, we've got it coming into our classrooms at one time or another. A lot of the trauma that I see in my classroom, parents that are absent or are just too busy to be parents at night, not because they're bad parents, but because they're trying to make a living in an environment where they just don't have a lot of money. We have a lot of kids that are hungry. We feed them breakfast, lunch. A lot of the teachers bring in extra food and send it home. Anything you can imagine going on with kids, we've had here. Parents are in prison, drug abuse, alcohol. You know, when a kid's been up all night because parents are having a fight or whoever, you know, is at their house and there's stuff going on, they come to school exhausted and tired, and the last thing they want to do is learn their multiplication facts.
Some of the problems that I saw early on was giving up, not working, not caring, I would say. Even though it's a bad thing to say, I would definitely saw that. Kids didn't see the importance of following directions.
So we hear story after story, and we've seen challenges with a number of referrals of young students entering with a complex behavioral challenge that's really attributed to poverty, socioeconomic conditions, parental challenges, stress at home. Certainly within the public health space, we see intergenerational trauma, intergenerational violence, intergenerational criminality in some populations. And so in order to break all of those cycles, we know that the school is an important intervention point.
We hired a social scientist by the name of Tony Biglin. We were interested in coming up with a plan for overall investment in community wellness and prevention. And so Tony worked with us and came up with a 9-point plan of different interventions and programs that we could invest in as a community that had long-term population health impact. All of these were evidence-based programs. And one of the programs that Tony recommended was the PAX Good Behavior Game.
We sat down as a staff and we looked at trauma-informed research because our staff was having just as bad of a time dealing with trauma. They didn't want to be here. Our absenteeism rate for staff was really high. We couldn't get subs to come out here anymore, and so we just kind of had to fill in the gaps as we went. We had a staff meeting that I'll never forget. One of our staff members just spoke up and she said, "Sarah, we don't care what you do something, and we're behind you all the way." We had our 3rd grade team pilot the program in January of that year. By February, I didn't see a single 3rd grader in my office for discipline reasons. And it spread like wildfire. It was the I'll have what she's having effect.
So the Early Learning Council introduced PAX Good Behavior Game as an option. We were looking at choices, and my superintendent heard about it and sat me down right away and said, "I think we need to talk about this. This could be really powerful in school, and let's think about how we could utilize this." We went back to the Early Learning Council and said, we'll try this out. We want to trial it, maybe do a little pilot practice is what my superintendent likes to do. A couple classrooms, let's see how it goes.
So it was piloted with a few people, and in fact, the teachers who tried that had such great success. Other teachers, "Hey, I want to do that. How can I get in on this?"
I got trained, and I came and we did the vision, and it was the most powerful thing. And one little girl raised her hand and said, "I just don't want to be embarrassed anymore by our behavior." The whole class just stopped, and it was so powerful because it was said out loud, and we talked about it on a daily basis. This is what we want our class to look like.
This is our PAX vision charts. This is the things we want to do more, and this is the stuff we want to do less of.
Just like our academics, that we needed a universal program, we needed a universal program for teaching social emotional skills and self-regulation and behavior, because so many students were coming to us without these skills. That's when Good Behavior came along, and we said, this is our universal system. This is a system that we will have to make sure that these skills are being taught.
When we started PAX, the kids were able to take a little bit of the control back from their lives because they don't have it when they go home. And a lot of them don't feel like they have it at school either. And so PAX gives them that few minutes of control, where we start out really small, 2 minutes, and it's amazing what 2 minutes of control to a kid who has no control in the rest of his life or her life can do. And then we just keep building it up, and we see really some cool, amazing things.
This year, I'm able to teach a whole lesson without being interrupted. A lot more work's getting done and done on time. Kids are persevering better. They're not getting as frustrated about not understanding and not being able to complete a task. I'd definitely say I'm even more organized as far as giving students what they need. And I even had teachers coming up to me and my administration coming up to me and saying, "So I take it it's working?" "Yeah, of course. It's great." And they're like, "Yeah, we can tell." Like, just from, I'm assuming, the way I was acting and my attitude and all that stuff was just totally changed. We are going to be playing Dead Fish. All right, here we go. Ready, set, dead fish. Dead fish don't laugh. 5 seconds. When that timer goes off, I want to see us stand straight up and get back into the line. That's it, folks. Nice job, guys. Pat yourself on the back. All right, so let's make sure we have PAX hands, feet. Our PAX voice is 0 walking in the hall, okay? Here we go. Julio, lead us to PE.
It has not only become one of the things that we do, it's become our language here. It's become our culture. A lot of teachers have told me after all of the social emotional learning that we've implemented that this is not something that got added to their plate, it is their plate. And they actually have time to teach math and reading because their kids are regulated enough now to learn. And without the social emotional piece, without PAX, they wouldn't be able to teach.
As a group, I want you to come up with 3 more signal words that you would have in your reading that would say that it was something that a character said. Okay? Spleen team 1. Right now, talk with your group.
And I had a 2nd grade teacher. As soon as she got everything rolling and got everything established, she came to me and she said, I taught a math lesson today and I had 10 extra minutes and I didn't know what to do, just because that was so not the norm a few years ago. And then our discipline referrals, we went from 120 a month, which is an average of 4 a day, 2 years ago, down to 6 a month last month. So a huge decrease in office referrals.
It's so exciting to go in and see a classroom at the beginning of the school year and then go back in about mid-year and see the change in them and the self-regulation that they're able to now have given all of these practices are put into play in the classrooms.
One of the key takeaways from doing any research on trauma is that kids coming from challenges need to have some choice and some voice in what they're doing. And PAX is the only program I've seen that actually starts by activating kids thinking about how they get to describe what they want their school environment to look like, and they get to have a voice in every space of how they want it to feel when they come into the building each day. And that's something that we come back to in the program every single day before any good behavior game in the classroom. Teachers are reviewing that and giving kids a chance to say, I want school to be like this, or I need school to give me this. It's very, very much in line with what we're seeing we need to offer our students who come from trauma. And for our students who don't, they all want to speak. They're kids. They want to feel like someone's hearing them. They want to feel like adults give them the time of day and listen to what they're saying. And I, in looking at different programs and thinking about behavior implementation in my school, have not seen a program that does that other than PAX.
When we enter into a PAX game, students become hyper-focused on doing the things that lead to learning. They're thinking about their hands, they're thinking about their eyes, they're thinking about their voices, they're thinking about their bodies. And when they can manage and control those pieces, they're able to attend to the learning.
Thank you. I do want to remind you, when you hear that harmonica, you stop what you're doing. Your hand goes into PAX.
If things are starting to go a little haywire, kids are acting up a little bit, you play a PAX game, and all of a sudden the atmosphere in the room is different. They own their behaviors.
So I have one student in my room who's a year younger than everybody because their birthday's the day before the cutoff date. So they're very immature compared to the rest of the kids. And so PAX has really helped that student when they came in at the beginning of the year, they were really kind of jumpy and flighty and kind of all over the place and interrupting and trouble sitting on the carpet. And one day, this student just came down the hallway with the PAX sign up, and I was like, wow, I'm really loving your PAX leadership this morning. And I got this big smile, and like that whole day just went great. So they just decided, I'm going to be a PAX leader today. And it was a fabulous day. And sometimes, you know, we slip back a little bit and I'll remind them, oh, remember that day when you were that fabulous PAX leader? And then all of a sudden I'll get this again. So I think if I had something to say about a teacher being fearful of doing this, I would say go do the training, and then immediately you start seeing the benefits that could happen in your classroom.
PAX has saved our school. It has not only become one of the things that we do, it's become our language here.
Instead of cheese, let's say PAX rocks. PAX rocks!